Hey, Rebels. My name is Matthew Barton, and I'm the host of the Rebellion Brewing Podcast. If there's one thing you need to understand about Mark Heisey, the president and CEO of Rebellion, it's that his sense of humor is deeply connected to subversion and shock value. He loves nothing more than walking into a room full of stuffy people wearing pointy leather shoes and suits and messing with their expectations with cowboy hats and sleeveless t-shirts. If you have a keen eye, you may have noticed the length of his forearm features a tattoo of the famous drag queen Divine, who appeared in John Waters' counterculture comedy known as Pink Flamingos. The film is notorious, featuring shocking scenes of cannibalism, castration, vomit, sex, shit, and more. It's a big middle finger to polite sensibilities, which suits Mark just fine, and it kind of informs what Rebellion is about. Today's guest is an activist, a drag queen, comedian, and provocateur who shares Mark's sense of humor. Terry Van Mackelberg seeks to raise awareness and entertain with the alter ego Flo Mingo. So let's get into it.
Hi, how are you?
Good.
I'm so fucking excited to be here. You have no idea. Especially when I found out Mark's tattoos of Divine. Like, that's fabulous.
How was the selling feature?
That was, as soon as you told me about that, I'm like, I'm in. I gotta come and do this.
Let's start from the very beginning. How long have you been involved in drag culture?
You know, I will be coming up to 3 years this September, so I'm still kind of a baby queen. I'm a virgin queen, I guess you'd say.
What is the nomenclature for referring to people who participate?
Like as far as pronouns go, and
like you said, there's baby queens, queens. Earlier, before we started recording, there was reference to hyper queen.
Okay, so yeah, they're baby queen isn't, I guess, a term that's common in the culture. I just call myself a baby queen because I've only been doing it a little bit. But there is hyper queens. A hyper queen is a cisgendered woman who wants to be a drag queen. And then there could be hyper kings, who's a cisgendered man who wants to present as a drag king. Then you can get down to it. There's drag things, which really is whatever you want to be. You know, drag is an expression of art. It's an expression of whatever you want to be. So there's no right or wrong way to do drag.
Really? How did you get started?
You know, let me take, there is some wrong ways. I've seen some wrong drag out there. Don't get me wrong.
Some Freddy Krueger style.
It's like, what are you doing, girl? Come on. Your tuck came out.
Jesus Christ.
I warned you that, you know, when you get Flo in here, it's a shit show.
Your tuck came out. So I got to compose myself. How did you get started?
You know, it's not something that, like, ever since I was a child that I thought, oh, I want to be a glamorous queen. Like, it never really crossed my mind, but I went to a couple drag shows and I thought, well, that's really, really exciting. I'd kind of like to try it. So that's one way I got into it. The other way, not a lot of people know about this. My partner at the time, I told him, you know, I kind of want to try drag, and I was still a baby gay as well, so I was fairly new to coming out, and he said, no, I don't want you to do that. I'm dating a man, not a woman. And so when we split 2 weeks later, I put on a pair of heels and a dress, and I'm like, here I am. So it was also kind of, you know, a big fuck you, like, I can do it too, and I haven't stopped.
What is your persona? What is Flo Mingo? Who is Flo Mingo?
Who is Flo? I don't know who Flo Mingo is. So when I first started doing drag, I kind of went a little bit over the top. You know, like I had the big hair, colorful hair. I'm 6'4" as a man, 230 pounds. So I'm going to, you know, stand out as it is. But I kind of tried to paint, you know, more feminine looking. And it wasn't quite doing it for me. It just wasn't fitting. And very quickly I adapted to this new look with exaggerated eyes. Like, when I walk down the street, you're like, what the hell is that? It is gorgeous. I do want to kind of touch it, but it's a man as well, because I'm not going to look like a female no matter what. So I might as well look like an exaggerated, beautiful man.
Okay. And what do people do when they see you in the street? Do they like, wow, they want to come talk to you? They want to engage with the personality?
98% of the time, yes, they want to come and interact because I'm going to stand out. You know, it's, again, I'm tall. You know, I have huge hair, this big makeup on, pretty, you know, exaggerated outfits. 98% of them want to come and talk. The other 2% want to have sex with me or beat me up.
that's a
Both has happened as well.
But if you're that tall, can't you just like take off a heel and hit a guy with it? Like,
Oh, honey, yes. Like, you know, there was one time where I did get attacked. I was in Medicine Hat, and a guy put his arm around me and started choking me from behind. And when you're 230 pounds in a pair of heels with your balls tucked up inside you, you're fucking angry. Like, you're going to get mad at a bastard, right? So I started attacking back, and I was winning. And then two of his buddies jumped on me and started taking me down to the ground. Thankfully, two of my buddies were there. And they saw what was happening, came to my rescue. They're UFC fighters, and took them down to the ground. But yeah, like, you know, in a fair fight, I could definitely, you know, handle myself.
somebody was telling me they wear rings when they're dressed up.
Yes.
Because rings hurt more when you start throwing punches.
Well, they definitely would. I mean, the drag jewelry, because everything's over the top. It's not just a little ring. Like, it's exaggerated jewelry. But the amount I pay for it, I don't want to hit anybody with it. Like, that shit's expensive. I'll just take off my heel and crack him in the head.
A stiletto sticking out of his temple. What do you get out of it? Like, how do you feel when you're doing it?
It's interesting as you go through the process of getting ready for drag. Because it takes me about 3 hours just to get into drag. Like, that's not even doing the show. That's just start to finish of the preparation. Throughout getting ready, I'm loving it. You know, I listen to my music. I'm, you know, putting my makeup on. And then when I'm done, just before I put my lashes on, I look in the mirror and I think, this is absolutely awful. I hate this. Why am I doing this? It looks terrible. And then you put your lashes on and everything's okay because lashes cover so much. And then when I get to the show, I have a lot of anxiety, you know, heading to a show, thinking about, you know, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to do? Trying to remember my performances in my mind. Because that's the one rule of being a drag queen is know your songs. We don't have to do a lot. We just have to lip sync, at least know the goddamn words. So, you know, you're preparing for that. And the moment I walk into the venue, everything escapes me and it's just joy because people gravitate towards the excitement. They love seeing what's going on. You know, they want to get pictures with you. You almost kind of feel like a star in a way when you walk into a show. But I think what I get most out of it is not only the excitement on people's faces, but I always try to deliver a message of equality and acceptance. And if I was to stand there as Terry, who I am 98% of the time, I'm not going to get the same amount of people listening, or they may not pay attention to me. But when you're 6'4", put on a pair of heels and hair, and you're over 7, feet tall, and you're on a microphone, people are going to listen. And I can deliver that message of acceptance, equality, and just be who you want to be.
How is that received in places like Regina?
Regina's been really good. I do my show with Katie Harry, who's my co-host for the Sweet and Sticky show. If you haven't seen Katie Harry, I mean, you got to look at that bitch. She's got a beard on her, but she's goddamn gorgeous. And we started that show up in June, and we've been talking about it for about a year. Trying to find the right venue and how's the show going to go and how's it going to be perceived. And since June until COVID hit, we've had sold out shows time after time after time because we have returning guests that just love what's going on. And then people just hear about it and they gravitate towards it. Drag culture has somewhat been underground in Regina, but it's been happening for many of years. The GLCR, or you might know it as the Q Nightclub and Lounge, there's always a drag show. Every month you're guaranteed 1 or 2 drag shows at that venue. So it's definitely something that's happening. People just aren't always aware that it's out there. I like to spread the message and make drag, in the scene. This is what's happening. I do a yearly show at the Ramada, High Heels, High Hopes, to raise money for Carmichael Outreach. And every year we sell out, and that's, 250 tickets that people are buying to come see a bunch of men in dresses and heels entertain them. But they love it.
One of the things that I kept thinking about before this interview was kind of the history of drag. I am not well versed in all of it, but I am aware and conscious of, in World War I, World War II, there were soldiers in the front lines who would dress up in drag and entertain the guys, because it was all guys just by themselves. It's a horrible, lonely experience up in the front, but there was drag happening.
Yeah.
And then I think, well, it had to go somewhere after the war. It didn't just vanish. Yeah. And now it's happening here, but it kind of always was? Or
drag has been around longer than what we really know. It, thankfully RuPaul has brought it to mainstream for us, but drag has been happening so much longer. I'm not a history buff like you, but you go back to, the days of before television and even electricity, when there was plays and whatnot that would happen. Females weren't allowed to act in the plays. So when there was a female role, the men would have to play that role. And drag actually comes from when their dresses would drag across the set or the stage that they were on. And that's apparently where the word drag came from, is the dresses dragging across the stages.
It's funny that you bring that up, because I remember reading about William Shakespeare and
Yes.
how they would have big fights between the actors, who one was maybe an understudy but was now up and coming, and the other one was aging out of a certain role and had to adopt a new one, but wanted to keep playing the female role because that was who they were and who they were on stage, and that was their identity. So
Yeah.
it's interesting that you've connected those pieces and kind of fired that in the back.
See, I'm not a history. I'm glad you brought up Shakespeare. I was trying to think of the era, and I'm like, well, I don't know. He'll know more than I will. I'm not that smart, though.
But there's still a lot of education and activism that you're plugged into, right?
Yes, that's really what drag is right now. Is it's a political stance. It's a lot of activism, and that's what the reason I do drag. Unless you're a RuPaul queen traveling around the world, you're not going to make a lot of money doing drag. Very minimal. So I put my efforts then into activism work, and actually raising a lot of money for charities such as Lulus Lodge, which is the first and only LGBTQ2S plus youth home here in Regina. That's a lot of letters in that, by the way, LGBTQ2S plus. But that's, a lot of the work I do is to raise money for them.
2S means twin-spirited?
Two-spirited.
Two-spirited?
Yes.
What is plus?
All the other letters that we're not including in there because I'm getting tired of saying them all. But so it's LGBTQ2S IAP are the ones that I typically go to. There are some other letters that will go on there, but
that's beyond me. Back when I was in university, it was like LGBTQ.
Yes.
And then at the very end, there was some talk of 2S.
Yep. So 2S, two-spirited. I want to say the year was 1990. It's either 1990 or 1991. Was officially started being used at a conference, an LGBTQ at that time conference in Winnipeg, Manitoba, and they adopted the 2S at that time, and it's become a part of our acronym.
I remember speaking with somebody from the First Nations community that was saying, prior to colonialism, if you were two-spirited, or two-spirited, not twin-spirited, that you would often be considered like a medicine, a person with power, healing. You transcended into another level. I can't remember all the words, but they said basically they were treated as healers and leaders and advisors.
The term two-spirited I get asked often about it, and I don't always give the explanation on it because I'd rather have them talk to somebody who's Indigenous, because that it's a cultural meaning. But before colonialism, two-spirited people were of a higher power. They walked on both worlds, right? They walked with both genders, and they were often seen as a higher power. So before colonialism and Christianity came, our community's been there, and the Indigenous people honored it and accepted it, and it was part of their culture.
Do you think that because of the First Nations community here, maybe some of that reclamation of that culture can inform what's happening in the broader community?
That they definitely, it is happening. All of our voices continually are trying to be silenced by groups and people out there. But we need to. You look at the murdered and missing Indigenous women. And it's murdered and missing Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited people. And it's because our voices are being silenced, and we need to stand up for the rights of all people. But there are groups. As a gay man, I have it a lot easier than an Indigenous person because of my white privilege. I have it easier than a person of color. So we need to use our voices to strengthen the voices of those that are being lost.
Well, you talked about wanting to offer some protection or guidance for people through Lulus. Can you explain to me, talk to me like I'm 6 and I don't know what it is?
Okay. So Lulus Lodge is, as I mentioned, an LGBTQ2S plus youth home here in Regina. It's operated by the John Howard Society. It is a home that offers a safe place for youth that may be displaced because of who they are. Whether they're gay, bisexual, trans, lesbian, two-spirited. A lot of times our youth end up going down a harder path in life because of their sexuality or their gender that they identify with, and they're not accepted in their family settings. Which could lead them to be on the streets and become homeless. Lulus Lodge offers them a home. It's a place that they can lay down their head, know that they're accepted, and they can be who they want to be.
Why is that important?
It's important because our youth need to know that they are loved, that there's nothing wrong with who they are. It's important to me because I lived in the closet for 34 years. I knew I couldn't come out in the community that I grew up in. I knew I couldn't come out with the family that I did have. If I would have come out as a young, there's a good chance I would have ended up homeless. And there was no Lulus Lodge at that time, so I would have been on the streets and possibly leading a life of crime and drugs and alcohol. Luz Lodge is important because for somebody like me as a youth coming out right now, I know that I would have a place to go.
What's the biggest lesson you've learned through your activism, through drag, through everything you've lived in the last few years?
I'm learning constantly about our community. When I first came out, I didn't understand. I knew that I was gay. I understood what lesbians were. I understood what bisexuals were. I didn't understand the privileges that I still had as a white cisgendered man compared to a person of color. And it took me some time to understand why this group is still marginalized, why they're still fighting for rights. Because I thought, if you fall under the rainbow, if you fall into the LGBTQ2S plus umbrella, we're all treated equal. I suffer just as much as you suffer, but that's not true. We've made a lot of strides. We've come a long way to fight for our rights. There's still, a ways to go to get to equality for gay men, but there's even farther to go for transgender women. Or transgender people in general. There's still a long way to go for transgender women of color. The expected life expectancy for a transgender woman of color is not over the age of 38 because they're being murdered. As a white man, I can walk downtown and not fear being murdered the same way a transgender woman of color could walk down the streets and her fear of being murdered. So, and you think of, you know, what's going on in our world today, the Black Lives Matter movement. There are groups that are marginalized because of the color of their skin, and we're not the same in our community. And when I say community, I mean the LGBTQ2S community. And we need to fight for the rights of those that are still fighting. A transgender woman of color 51 years ago, Marsha P. Johnson, fought for my rights. She's a transgender woman of color. She marched the streets and fought back and started this movement of what we now know as Pride for my rights. I need to do the same for those other people.
What was she doing? Why is this month Pride Month? Like, where did that come from?
So June is recognized as Pride Month. June, 51 years ago, 1969, the Stonewall Inn, which is in New York, was a kind of a little hole-in-the-wall bar. And it was a gay bar, they called it at the time, but it was for all of our community. And it was common that police would raid the bar and arrest those because it was illegal to be gay at that time. It was illegal to be a man or born at birth a man and dressed as a woman. You had to have so many articles of clothing on you that identified as your gender at birth. So they would go in and arrest. And this happened time and time again. But that night at Stonewall, the patrons decided to fight back. The police came in to raid the place, and they said, enough's enough. We are humans. We deserve to be here. And they started a riot, and the riot lasted over 5 days, going into 6 days on the streets of New York. And that started the Pride movement. The next year was the first actual Pride March that, again, to say we belong, we have rights too. And it's just continued after that. So that's why June is kind of considered Pride Month.
So Pride's not just a party. There's a whole history behind it.
It's still a movement. I mean, yes, we like to celebrate. You'll see some amazing parades, some amazing floats, dancers in the street, some events going on. And it is a celebration. And I like to think of it, we're celebrating as where we were and where we are today, but it's still a political movement. It's still, we have to march on those streets and say, this is who we are. 31 years ago was the first Pride March in Regina. And when they approached the city to get the permit for the march, the parade, as we call it, the city declined their request to have a parade permit, saying we don't need to showcase sexuality. So they went ahead and did it anyways. They marched on those streets down to the Parliament buildings, a lot of them wearing bags on their head for fear of losing their jobs because of their sexuality or their gender. And it's still a movement. 31 years ago isn't that long. I'm 38, so it was after I was born. They were marching on the streets with bags on their heads here in Regina.
Today, because things have changed, are changing, we're in this, what feels like a watershed moment of awareness and awakening with, the world almost felt like it was coming to an end with COVID. And now the cities are burning in the States with Black Lives Matters. There's been demonstrations in Regina. What does progress look like to you now?
Progress is going to be equality of everybody. It is going to be understanding what white privilege is and the discrimination that people of color and indigenous people are facing. We've come a long way for me as a gay man. Yes, I can get married, I can walk down the street, all that fun stuff. There's still a little bit to do. I can't donate blood if I'm a gay man without certain restrictions on it. There's certain countries that if I visited, I could be prosecuted or murdered for being a gay man. But I'm not going to get murdered because of the color of my skin. I'm not going to get discriminated against because of the color of our skin. And we're not equal until we're all equal. And Pride needs to understand that movement, and Black Lives Matter movement, and murdered and missing Indigenous women, girls, and two-spirited people movement. And we need to fight for their rights because we went through it as well.
If somebody wants to help the causes that you're working for, but they don't know where to get started, maybe this is the first time they're kind of thinking about these ideas. Where should they start?
You know, there's when we're talking about Lulus Lodge, I would contact the John Howard Society here in Regina. The interesting thing about Lulus Lodge is there's no actual government grants or money available to an LGBTQ to a specific project or youth home because it's specific to a group. The reason that it needs to be specific to a group is our community requires different resources than a straight youth would. When you think of somebody who is trans, they require a lot more attention for medical appointments and whatnot. So there's different resources required.
So you're saying the government won't fund it because they need to say everybody needs to be able to participate.
It's a youth home. And then there's different funding for it, but because there's the rainbow in front of it, I'm going to say the rainbow because it's a lot easier than saying all those damn letters. Because there's a rainbow in front of it, it lessens the chances of getting certain funding. So it's really been driven by community donations. Of course, Katie, Harry, and I, we do the Sweet and Sticky show at the Cure. That's raised money for them, and there's a lot of members in our community that has done a lot of shows, a lot of different work to raise money for Lulus Lodge.
It's about protecting young kids?
That's what it is to let young kids know that they have a home to go to. The fun fact is, and it just got announced a week ago, they were approved to buy a home. They've always been renting up to now, which leaves some uncertainty. They have now been able to purchase a home, but there's a large debt to doing this. And we need money. We need money to keep this home going. So you can contact the John Howard Society and talk to them about Lulus Lodge. Even reach out to Flo Mingo on Facebook, and I will hook you up to make sure that money gets to Lulus Lodge.
I'll be sure to include links in the show notes.
Yes.
So if anyone wants to click through and learn and find out how to get involved or help,
yeah,
maybe they're feeling in their life they saw other people discriminated against, or maybe they knew what it was like to be homeless or face homelessness.
Exactly.
And say, now's my opportunity to help out and give back and lift up others.
Just imagine, you as a kid being told you're no longer allowed to live here because you're straight. Now, that's the reality for a lot of people in my community. And it's, you're not allowed to live here because you're gay. Our sexuality, our gender expression should not determine if a parent loves you or not. And Lulus Lodge offers, I get very emotional talking about Lulus Lodge because I know that I wouldn't have had a home either. Lulus Lodge lets those kids know, it's all right. You're loved. There's a community here that loves you.
Before we get very, very much heavy into other things, let's do something really light and drink a brand new beer by Rebellion.
I was just about to take a sip as you were saying that. I'm like, I better hold off. Here he goes.
I'm sorry I made you made you wait so long to drink this one. This is Cucumber Jasmine, brand new, just canned it like 2 days ago. This is the very first time we've launched it.
This is that new.
Yeah.
Holy.
4.5%, designed for light summer drinking.
It is, I'm going to say it's fucking fantastic. And I know you told me to be completely honest. I get a lot of work done on my face, Botox, lip filler. And when you go into those type of places, always have like the nice the cucumber water. This is, I explained it earlier as carbonated cucumber water. It is like, I could see myself sitting on a patio drinking this. It's very refreshing.
The nose, like when you put your nose into it.
Or are we supposed to do that? Do I swirl it?
That's okay.
I got to swirl a little bit.
It's really got that fresh kind of garden cucumber.
Yeah.
It's not that chemical kind of extract flavor. It's a natural.
No, it's not a cucumber chemical peel that you're going to buy at a drugstore and apply to your face. Like this is the real deal.
It tastes like grandma's cucumbers in grandma's garden.
I wasn't going to say grandma's cucumber, but if you want to say it tastes like grandma's cucumber, you go ahead. It's a little fresher than grandma's cucumber.
As soon as I said it, I was like, oh, he's going to nail me to the wall.
I don't know what grandma's doing with her cucumber, but damn, she makes a good beer with it after.
This one is one of Vanessa's babies. It's something that were researching last year. They went to a beer festival and they tasted a couple cucumber beers and they're like, wait, I think we can do this even better.
Yeah. I think Rebellion nailed it. Like you guys nailed it. It is what it needs to be. It's not over cucumber. It's not too much beer. It's the right blend of beer and cucumber. You know, I'm usually a kind of a pink, fruity looking drink. You know, anything that looks extremely gay, I'm going to drink it. This I would drink. It is amazing.
I think you have to be careful because you could probably crush like 3 or 4 of these in a row.
Oh, absolutely.
And then you just have to like sit down.
Absolutely. Like when you buy, you know, a 4-pack of this, you're in for the long haul. Like you're going to sit there and you're going to drink it all. You're not going to put it away and say, I'll have one in a couple days. Like, no, you're going to fucking finish them all right now.
We were thinking of what we should pair this with. And Vanessa was like, well, you kind of want fruits and fruity cheeses with the mashed up bits of maybe like cranberry in the cheese.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, that sounds really good. And then she's like, oh, and fish. Okay. It's going to go really well with like
I don't know how to pair stuff, but I can see that happening. But what my mind is thinking is you're thinking, okay, what are we going to pair this with? We need to do a podcast because we want to, you know, promote this beer. And somebody's like, oh, we need to pair it with fruits. And then you picked me. You picked like one of the like biggest homosexuals in the city. You're like, hey, he's a fruit. Bring him on in here.
Oh man, you're nailing me to the wall. But for the record, I was supposed to have somebody talking about barbecue today, and they had to cancel at the last second.
So then you still brought in the fruit. Okay, I see where this. I'm second best, and the fruit.
Well, I also wanted to get you in for Pride Month.
That's true. It is Pride Month.
It felt very prescient. By the time this broadcasts, it'll be over because it'll be about 2 weeks from this. It'll
be 2 weeks. But you know what? Pride isn't just
it doesn't
one
stop.
day. Pride is 365 days a year. We need to celebrate who we are. We need to fight for our rights. But while we are talking about Pride Month and beer and fruits and Lulus Lodge, I'm going to actually challenge Rebellion to come up with a Flo Mingo beer. And I say challenge. You know what? I'm trying to make it look like, ooh, it's on the spot. Of course, we fucking talked about this before the show. But we're going to be working on a Flo Mingo beer, possibly in the future, to raise money for Lulus Lodge.
I think it's something that we should definitely take seriously.
Yeah.
Figuring out the artwork is going to be fun.
Yes.
And when it comes to beer, we're willing to push the boundaries of flavor and try all sorts of wacky things. It's just, at the end of the day, it's got to taste good.
It's got to taste good. Otherwise, people aren't going to buy it, right? It can't be just looking on the can. It's got to be good inside.
But I really
That's what I told the boys.
I really liked the look in your face when we told you we did a sparkle beer.
Honey, a beer with Flo's face on it and sparkles? How fucking amazing that would be.
And then Steph was saying, there needs to be a unicorn.
We got to have unicorns on there. We got to have some rainbows on there. And I don't know, I think something was shooting out of someone's ass at one point. I'm not too sure. But yes, my look on my face was over the top. But my look on my face when you talked about the community support that Rebellion does was equally as impressive, because that's what I stand for, and it's fairly clear that that's what Rebellion stands for, and I think it would be a magical thing to do, and supporting kids that need a home. Like, you can't go wrong.
You get to drink a really tasty beer. You get to help kids who really, really need it, who are in a tough jam.
Exactly.
You're making the community better by drinking beer.
And having Flo on your lips. How can you go wrong? All you guys out there, if you have ever wanted Flo on your lips, now is the chance.
The 2%?
It's a 2% beer. It's really light, but holy shit, will it get you in the ass in the end? See what I did there?
Yes.
That's a gay reference.
I'm just killing myself. That's funny, man. I literally have nothing to say.
That's what happens when you bring a drag queen in here. One with a big mouth.
Oh, man. Sorry, you got it. Now I got the giggles. I gotta. Okay. We talked about the beer. What's next for Flo Mingo? What's next for Terry?
You know what? Activism doesn't end. You know, it's not like, oh, the world's a great place now and we can go on our merry way. Obviously, COVID has put a halt to a lot of in-your-face activism that I like to do. And when I say in-your-face, it's not. I'm not the type that feels like I need to scream at you to help to make you realize. But I do want to have a conversation with you and listen to my side. You know, I have a powerful voice, whether I'm as Terry because I'm a white man. I have a powerful voice because I stand out as I'm Flo Mingo, and I'm going to use it. And I'm going to use it to ensure that I do my part to make everyone feel safe and that they belong. It's never going to end. I'm going to continue doing what I do.
Well, I want to thank you for your time today.
Oh, thank you so much, Matt. This was a blast. When you and Mark reached out to me, I thought, holy shit, this is going to be good. You know, and it's not a collaboration that you would typically see, you know, a beer company and a drag queen coming together. But I think it's a beautiful relationship, and thank you so much.
Cheers.
I'll drink to that.
Yeah, that's pretty good beer.
It's really good.
Rebels, thanks for listening today. Be sure to check out the links in the show notes so you can find more about Flo Mingo and Regina's drag scene. I'm also going to include links to the John Howard Society so you can find out how to help out with Lulus. If you have any questions or comments about this episode, be sure to join us on our brand new Facebook group page, the Rebellion Brewing Podcast. As you know, we're proud to be affiliate members of the Saskatchewan Podcast Network. If you're looking for great new podcasts to listen to, be sure to hop onto the network and check out all the new local content being made right here in our province. As you know, the Saskatchewan craft beer scene is always changing, but I'm going to do my best to keep featuring all the new local beers coming out. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Untapped so you don't miss out on a single thing. Thank you for joining the Rebellion.